Okay, so how to enjoy meaningful work. First thing I wanted to do was acknowledge Neil, the fact that he's still up, but also say thank you to everybody that's tuned in. It could be 3 o'clock in the morning, or you could be enjoying lunch with your family on Good Friday. So thank you for making the time to be here. In discussing how to enjoy meaningful work and stop just working to pay the bills, I thought it would be worth touching on what it is to enjoy meaningful work and what it is to just work to pay the bills. So to start with, let's have a look at what it is to pay the bills. I wonder how many of you here can relate to acknowledging hump day, being excited by Fridays, and living up large on the weekends so that you can get through the weeks, celebrate your annual leave, and just get through one week after the next. For mine, they're all symptoms of just working to pay the bills. And what I find fascinating about that is that people will...
Sorry, Brian, just interrupt. The slides aren't moving. Have you moved any at all yet?
No, I haven't moved anything yet.
Okay, right, sorry. That's been... Oh, perfect. Yeah, it all works. Okay, over to you.
No worries. Thanks, Neil. So that's some of the symptoms of enjoying meaningful work. The other part that goes with it is that most people put their work on a pedestal. So they set their alarm and start their day just in enough time to get to work on time, and they finish their day when the job is complete, which leaves them returning home spent and wanting to switch off. And as I mentioned before, celebrating the weekends and their annual leave. So what's the real impact of that? I'm not normally a big stats guy, but I found these quite striking. I'll give you a moment just to take those in because there's a lot to read. What struck me the most is 85% of people in full-time jobs globally are unhappy in their jobs. And as you read through those stats, you can see that it has an impact on people's health, physical and mental. It also has an impact on their relationships. And I thought it was really interesting. Bonnie Ware wrote a book. She worked in palliative care and wrote a book about the top regrets of the dying. And she talks here about wishing that they had more courage to live a life true to themselves and not the life that others expected of them. And 2, that they wish they didn't work so hard. Now, it might be folly to say that work is totally responsible for these statistics. However, I do think it might be a choice to live in fantasy if we didn't acknowledge that the role that work plays in our lives is broken. So if there's some of the symptoms and some of the impacts of working to pay the bills, what is this working to pay the bills? For mine, any job that's filled with tasks that you're good at and then you can get paid to do, and that's the full sum of your work, it's highly likely that you are just working to pay the bills. You're in a land of external motivation. While you're paid, you turn up. While your boss says that you're doing a terrific job, and perhaps most indicative is that the job's flexible enough that you can leave that behind and go and spend more time connecting with people and tasks that are more important to you. So it's a land of external motivation. So if that's a little bit about what it means to work to pay the bills, what is meaningful work? Meaningful work for me taps into inspiration and doesn't rely purely on external motivation. So how do you access internal inspiration? Well, each job will always have components of what you're good at and what you can get paid to do. But it's tapping into those tasks that you really love to do and that you find meaningful that will help you access internal inspiration. Now, that is if we focus on the tasks itself. There's another really important part about meaningful work, and that is the context of which you do it in, or how you arrived at what it is. And I believe that comes from starting with life design. So think about what is the life that you want to create for yourself. And if your work is aligned and you can see how it connects to and helps you create the experiences you want and the financial resources you need to pay for the things that you want to have and the things you want to do, it creates room for you to have gratitude. for your work. So how is it that you might start there? It's amazing. Most people spend more time planning for their holidays than they do planning for their work. So when I was my late 20s, I'd rebounded from 10 years in recruitment and started working as a fundraiser at a hospital because I was concerned that I was a shark, having been in sales for too long, and wanted to connect with or reconnect with this idea that I'm still a good guy. And what I didn't understand at the time was that I was seeking external validation that I was still a good guy. So I did fundraising for a hospital. And what I quickly learned was that, gee, that was a tough gig. Trying to do sales with no resources or very limited resources was really tough. But what it did drive me to was this contrast of having worked in recruitment. In the context of my family, I'd had great success, opportunities to travel, earn good money, and had been successful, if you like, at an early age. But I found it unfulfilling. So I jumped into fundraising, got all this great feedback that I was a great bloke because I helped a hospital help all sorts of sick people, and I still was unfulfilled. So it was the first time in my life that I took the time to actually write down what it is that I want in my life and what role and what part work will play in that. So I explored my relationship with work, if you will. Now, rather than just listening to me, this could be a good opportunity for you to take some notes. I'm a huge fan of taking notes. We never remember as much as we think we will. So if you've got a pen and paper, here are 5 prompts that can be really powerful to help you think about doing a little bit of life design before we start talking about the work design. So the first might be to do a timeline. Start at the left-hand side of your page and draw a line right across your page to whatever age you think you'll live to. And then take some time to actually write down what it is that you want to experience and create for yourself. Some interesting themes could be security. They might be buying a house or selling a house, buying an investment property, a sea change, a life change. You might want to look at relationships. Where are you in terms of finding your life partner, and if that's important to you, what that might mean in terms of marriage, kids, empty nesting, grandkids, etc. When you've given some thought to the things that you'd like to have and things you'd like to do, work is still an important part of the context. So when do you see, what key milestones do you see in your career? That might be when you see yourself peaking. It might be when you see yourself slowing down and transitioning to retirement. So mark those down too, what the event is, but also make note of what age you are. And then do likewise for your bucket list. I think we should all have a bucket list. So where do you want to go fishing? What event do you want to participate in? And get it all down. Now this is for you, it's not for anyone else. So write before you judge. And you don't need to explain it or share it to anyone else. So be brave, be playful, and get it all down. It's amazing how powerful the act of writing it down is. Once you see it, it also gives you an opportunity to explore the idea of time. And that can allow you to prioritize, or it can allow you to see time that you might not otherwise. So the timeline is the first part of the life design that I think is a great opportunity that most people haven't taken the time to do. Second part is think about the key relationships. Who is it that you want to share this life with? Knowing who those people are, where they are, how they work, can be really instructive into how you can work in a way that's complementary, that allows you to connect with those people in a way that's meaningful to you. I worked as a personal trainer for a number of years. And part of the reason I got out of that was that I was working when all the people I wanted to connect with were socializing. So I found it very difficult or expensive, because I couldn't work, to connect with the people I loved. So it wasn't congruent or aligned to the life I wanted to create. Finances are important. We live in a time in a world when we need to pay for things. So do the maths. What's your break-even cost? And what's your aspirational costs? People who don't plan their finances tend to make their life choices about the quality of their life based on what they can afford. What's left over after paying the bills? If you're aware of your break-even cost and your aspirational costs, it gives you freedom and flexibility to think about work beyond what I call the golden handcuffs, a phenomenon that lots of people know based on the fact that they spend their paycheck from week to week. They're paid well, they create a life based on what they can earn, and therefore feel that they can't leave that line of work at all, or it has to be for a job of similar money. So money's one thing, health and well-being is another. I love the saying that healthy people have many goals and a sick person has just one, which is to get well. If you take care of your health and well-being in a proactive fashion rather than waiting for it to be broken and to fix it, you'll have more energy to be present and build stronger connections and enjoy your life and your work more. And the final piece around this life design and the fifth prompt that I encourage you to consider is identity. Ultimately, it is a choice, and you can define or make that choice for yourself. And a lot of people, by default, will choose their work to define who they are. I think it's a good opportunity to explore values. And in exploring your values, it becomes a great common language to discuss work. Regardless of how well companies may live or walk the talk of values, it is a common language. And your understanding of who you are and what's important to you makes you a compelling candidate. So start with life design and the 5 areas: your future, key relationships, finances, health and well-being, and finally, your identity. Great exercise to do. And the more you write down, the more detail you include, the more you'll get out of that exercise. But in doing that, you're setting yourself up for success in being a candidate who truly understands himself, or certainly understands himself in a richer and deeper way than your competitors will. You understand why you're making the choices you are around the structure of how you want to engage with work. You're also thinking about the culture of the environment you want to work in so that you can ask better questions to achieve what most want, which is a good boss, a good team, and a great culture, because you're looking at things like values. If you join an organisation where people are doing the activities that you value and want to do to look after your health and well-being, they'll support you and make it easier for you to continue to do these activities. So it can provide great insight to help set you up. Now, I chose the images of the butterflies coming to life as a visual representation of the idea of life design. If you've done the thought about life design and got some insight into the way you want to work, the next part is then to think about what is the work that you want to do. And this is where I want to draw you away from being distracted by what you're good at and what you can get paid to do, because inevitably you'll end up doing work that other people want you to do. And it's devoid of internal inspiration that's driven by tasks that you love to do and that you think is meaningful. I've got a picture here on the bottom left of Pepper, my dog. Unconditional love, great reminder during tough times when I haven't behaved as well as I could or I'm stressed, and I put myself ahead of my family. But my dog's always got a tail wagging and ready for cuddle. So what is this idea of tasks that you love? It's fascinating. I observe in a lot of people that I coach that they no longer even use the language love. They've given up on that. They've made a decision that they don't deserve it. Like is very different to love. Like doesn't tap into that internal inspiration and get your juices flowing and fire you up. So I encourage you to think of a time when you were a kid, the giddy child, the one whose smile takes over their face, and that time, that moment when not only was your smile huge, but you were expressing yourself without care of the world. Those sort of tasks, that sort of energy is really powerful in guiding you back to tasks that you love to do and that can energize and inspire you to help you find meaningful work that you can enjoy. Now, the other photo that I've got here is a picture of myself as a 2-year-old. And that's a nice prompt for me around the idea of taking care of my inner child, if you like, which leads to taking care of myself, which means that I'm best placed to make a contribution to whoever it is I love and care for. Now, that could be my family, but also my workplace and my colleagues. Meaningful work is a great question. And the Ikigai model, talks about what does your world need more of. I love to add one more word, and that is what does your world need more of? If you're brave enough and courageous enough to think about the most painful time in your life, it will give you great insight into work that will be really meaningful for you. That pain will drive you to want to support and help others not experience that same pain. And in taking the effort and the time to solve problems in that space and connect individuals to that work, you'll get great satisfaction and perhaps be internally inspired. So if you then have work that is aligned to what it is you want to create in your life, you can be grateful for it. And if you have tasks that are not just what you're good at and what you can get paid to do, but also include what you'd love to do and what you find meaningful, you can start to tap into internal inspiration. Now, Dr. John Demartini talks about inspiration as being reflected in individuals who don't need to be told when to start. They're more orderly, they're more organised. They are people who see problems as opportunities to learn and grow. And in embracing those opportunities, they extend and enhance their mastery of their skills, which makes them more valuable to themselves, but also more valuable to the marketplace and potential employers. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight in what you mean, or what I mean, when I use the phrase meaningful work. If I was to summarise it more neatly, it's work that's aligned to the life you want to create for yourself and filled with tasks that also include what you love to do and what you find meaningful. Who doesn't want a bit of that? Who doesn't want to be inspired about getting up to an opportunity clock with energy, engaging in problems they want to solve, helping people that are important to them? Well, if that's you, then let's move on to how do we make that happen. 80% of jobs, I believe, come through a person's network. For what it's worth, I'd say resumes and job applications are perhaps a little bit overrated. And where the real power and opportunity is in networking. Networking is a bit of a dirty word for a lot of people because they're really uncomfortable with it. I think a great place to start is to acknowledge that we all network. We do it with our families. The reward is that they'll come to our parties, our birthdays. They might pick up the kids from school. They'll help us out when we're sick. You know what we do there? We remember their names. Remember what's important to them, what they might like. And we make an effort to engage in those activities with them. It's networking. What a lot of people haven't done is acknowledge and move into the context of looking for jobs. So what I want to highlight there is that we can all network. And knowing and acknowledging that you can network hopefully provides you a little bit more confidence that can be transferable. So if that's a bit about what is networking, who do you network with? Now, hopefully in the previous exercise, you've given some thought to your ideal job, a job that has elements that you would love and elements that you find meaningful and is aligned and supporting your ideal life. When you think about a job, the next question I have for you is who hires people to do that work? It's those people that need to know who you are, like you, trust you, and value what you have to offer. I'm a firm believer that most people who are hiring don't actually like recruiting, but they see it as an important part of solving a problem that they have, and so they will network. And when they recruit, they love to lean on their network because it's the cheapest, easiest, and most convenient way of fixing that problem. So we need to know who are these people that could hire you. Now, for most people, I love to ask them, how many people do they know that could actually hire them? And most people in their working lives have stayed in touch with a couple of managers through their history. So they might know 2 or 3 people. Some people know 5 or 6, and some even know a dozen. Inevitably, people feel more confident of getting their next job or a better job with the more people they know who could hire them. So how do we get to a point where you know 30 or 40 people who could hire you? Well, that's why I've included here the 5, 3, and 10. Encourage you to grab your pens again and draw up a table with 5 columns. Those 5 columns, your first column is going to be industry, second column companies, Third column is the title of the hiring manager. Fourth is the name of that person. And fifth is an action column. This is an opportunity for you to do a bit of market research. Now, if you choose 3 industries that you'd like to work in, your next challenge is to identify 10 companies that work in each of those industries. If you've done that work, you've identified 30 companies that you could work for. 30 opportunities to potentially enjoy meaningful work. Then the next column is the title of the hiring manager. I acknowledge that companies of different size, different industries, different nationalities, all use different language. I also acknowledge that different sized organisations might have more than one person who could hire you. So there's great reward in doing the work to identify who these people are, and what language the companies use is a great first step. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn, but you can lean into your personal networks and you can potentially do Google searches depending on the role type that you're looking for. And once you've got the language, it might be a vice president, it might be a team leader, it might be a manager, it can range broadly at different levels. You might be able to identify 2, 3 or more people. So if you've identified 3 industries, 10 companies, and 2 or 3 contacts or different titles, if you like, within each business, that might represent 30 to 50 people now who could hire you to enjoy meaningful work. And if you've gone through this process of doing the market research in this way, and identifying the company and identifying the title, it's likely that you'll have identified the name of the person, which is your 4th column. With those names, you now have visibility of all the opportunities you have to enjoy meaningful work. I like to call that the homework or the hit list. The 5th column then becomes your action column, which allows you to track what activities you've undertaken and what you'll do next. It's one thing to be aware of and see who it is that you can work with. It's another for them to know you. So if that's your starting place, what are the next steps? And that's why my prompt around humble and curious. To make those connections, to transition those relationships from unknown to valued, I believe the key is to be humble and curious. Instead of leaning into your network or expanding your network with new people by asking for work, embrace the fact that you're excited and inspired to enjoy meaningful work. Be humble in identifying these people and reaching out to these people to ask them about something you can learn from them. Be curious. Inquire about a tool they've used, a methodology they've used, an event they've managed, how it was that they got to this stage of their career. If you take the time to be humble and curious and reach out in that manner, you'll increase the likelihood of a positive response and a conversation massively compared to asking for a job. So give it a go. So what I've identified there is who can help you make this transition into enjoying meaningful work. Provided a structure to do some homework and identify where the opportunities are, and just touched on an approach that can serve you well to open the doors and start the conversations. The other thing I acknowledge is that you can leverage a tool like LinkedIn and be proactive to make those direct connections. Most people aren't comfortable to do that, or it takes a while to get to that level of confidence, and that's okay. Mutual connections are really powerful. LinkedIn's terrific because it identifies those mutual connections. But it's amazing when you have a name and a clear focus on who it is you want to connect with, that you can find the bridges or the connectors in your life. As I mentioned before, our networks tend to be more well established in our family life. So it might well be that the person who's going to make the introduction for you, or even the person who's going to hire you, is already in your network. I know us blokes easily default to talking about the weather or the footy or what's happening more so than asking what we do. But with a hit list and a focus on who you want to meet, you might be able to ask some better questions, and you might take a little more interest and build a richer, broader relationship with your friends or social network. Anyone who could hire you or anyone who works in a company you want to work for can potentially make a really meaningful introduction for you. Now, you don't have to do all the work and approach direct. Being in the same place as these people is really powerful. And one of the upsides of COVID was the increase of these sort of events. It's amazing how many people you can meet and how many events you can participate in without leaving your living room. And the benefit of being in an event, whether it's a chat room, on the chat function, or live in a room like we're starting to experience here in Melbourne, once you've met somebody, it's so much easier to ask and get 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes time for a coffee after that event. So identify and engage with. The other thing that's really powerful with networking is creating a standard for yourself. And in creating a standard for yourself, those that are consistent and persistent will get more from their network because they continue to set a standard. That might be just 2 activities a week, which could lead to 10 connections a month. That means that there's potentially 20, 30, 40 people who know them and could hire them and therefore give them security in their work, but also access to continuing to enjoy or perhaps enjoy it for the first time meaningful work. So hopefully there's a couple of ideas in there that have been valuable for you around networking. We can certainly talk more about those in the Q&A. The final topic I wanted to touch on in identifying what meaningful work is and how to make it happen is personal brand. So above and beyond humility and curiosity, what is it you're going to say that's going to capture the attention and compel somebody to want to talk to you? And I believe that's personal brand. It's a wonderful opportunity, and we all have a personal brand. Problem is that we all have lots of them. And what I mean by that is a brand might be considered what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And as a result, your friends talk about you in different ways, your family in different ways, colleagues in different ways. They all have lots of brands. Where a brand becomes really powerful is when it's consistently used often. The same one consistently used and often. So this is where there's value in crafting one. Because if you craft one and you use it as a filter in what you share, more and more people will identify you as the person for a certain context or event or a problem to solve, and that becomes really powerful. Now, it's ultimately a communication tool, and that's why I wanted to talk about it now, because in doing the market research before and identifying those 30 to 50 people who could hire you to enjoy meaningful work and giving thought to the environment that best suits you, whether that's nationality, company size, etc., you can really pinpoint an audience. Now, when it comes to positioning your greatest value, I don't think it lies in what you can do or what you've done. I think it actually lies in what problem you solve. People are moved to take action, which includes spending money on salaries and recruiters to fix problems. So I think there's real power in thinking about your brand in the context of what problem you solve. Now, if we can get into the mind and the heart of the person who can hire you and align that problem, that's when the magic happens. So who is this audience? Any leader who's hiring is a person who wants to shine, who wants a promotion, who wants access to a bonus. You know your industry. What are those buzzwords? And as a leader, they tend to have problems in one of 4 areas. It could be in money. Do they need to make more of it? Do they need to spend less of it? Perhaps be more profitable. Is it in productivity? Do they need to make more stuff happen? Is it in quality? Do they need to improve the way things are done? Or is it in people? Can they attract, recruit, retain, develop the right people? Now, the power of this one is that inevitably we are all driven and excited by one of those 4 areas more than the others. So if you can help this person who can hire you to get their brand by solving problems in an area that you love, that becomes a very powerful problem statement, if you like, that will capture the attention of the right person. So my ideal audience is anyone who's just working to pay the bills and is feeling the pain of that. The problem I solve is helping them to identify what it means to enjoy meaningful work. Now, the second part of this brand statement that becomes really powerful is how you do it. I believe anyone who's hiring who has a problem knows what the problem is, but also has an idea on how they want that solved. So you get two opportunities here to connect and compel somebody to reach out to you and want to speak to you. That is that you solve their problem, but also that you solve it in a way that they want it solved. So this is a great opportunity to reflect on feedback that you've heard. And I lean on 5 prompts. What feedback have you got from colleagues, the old water cooler conversation? What feedback have you got in a more formal context from bosses? I call it the gun. Do you know somebody who's does similar work to you that you admire and look up to? How would you describe how they work? What language do you use to describe how you work? What about your family? What language do they use to describe how you work? Now, there's lots of language here. Hopefully, you've come up with more than 5, more than 10, even 15 different words that give insight into how you work, so that you can then start to speak to the problems you solve and how you solve them, and also who you solve them for. Now, if you're really clear on your brand message, what problems you solve and who you solve them for, and a little insight into how you solve them, the value you get out of it is what you do with it. It's like any tool. You've got to use it. I think it's really powerful as a filter. So when you think about your resume, or you think about your LinkedIn profile, everything you share should be evidence that your brand statement is true. You do indeed solve that problem. You do indeed work that way. Then they're aligned. They become more powerful. Not only does it help you with your LinkedIn profile and your resume, it also helps you at interview. The person who's got you in for an interview likes what they've read. That moment at the beginning of the interview, if they ask you who you are, it's a great opportunity to use your personal brand statement. And then you provide that consistency. They get what they wanted and they relax into the interview. It's fantastic for networking too. Because anytime you want to reach out to somebody to talk about whatever the problem is you're stating you solve, or working in a way as you've stated you do, you're clearly someone who can add value to that conversation. So hopefully what I've done today is highlight a little bit of the difference between working to pay the bills and what it means to enjoy meaningful work, and provided some insights and some structure and perhaps some language that can help you identify what it is, who you need to speak to, how you can create those conversations. Because my big tip is that if you want to enjoy meaningful work, you've got to know what it is, one. And then you've got to know what your story is. That might be your personal brand. You need to know who needs to hear that story, which is anyone who can hire you. And then you've got to make the conversations happen. Appreciate it might feel easier said than done. But once you get into the work and start getting the responses and creating momentum, you might be surprised at how easy it is to do. All right. Thank you very much for your time. Neil, are you still there?
I have been listening intently, my friends. That was a fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed that. I really, really enjoyed that. The combination of that and personal brand is it's just really powerful, and the sort of backstory to it as well that you were discussing it was really, really good. I mean, you can see from the side, Robin really enjoying this presentation. Alex, thank you. Tim, thank you. So, obviously that's resonated with some people. If anyone has any questions for Brian, then please hit the ask a question button. I will be clipping this up because we're sort of and Gabrielle as well. Thank you, that was great. So some very engaged people. So thank you so much. We will be clipping this up and sending it out to everyone as well, and there will be replays of this. I know we've got a lot less people live than we did sort of earlier on in the session, but if anyone doesn't have any questions, then please throw them in. But if people want to find you, Brian, what's the best way for them to find you and ask you questions if they are watching a replay of this or watching the video sort of tomorrow or the day after?
Sure. You can find me at my website, but certainly the platform that I use most, and therefore you get the best feel of how I work and my message, if you like, is on LinkedIn. So you can find me under my name. There aren't too many Brian Klindworths. Could I go back to my presentation? I wanted to share one other thing, which I thought,
go for it. Yeah,
part entertainment, but hopefully useful. Now, did that work?
Oh, yeah. Yes, you're back.
Close message. What I wanted to show was just the next slide.
Go for it, yeah.
Show. Is that showing my screen? No. Okay. That hasn't. I'm not sure. Rather than sit on that, what I was going to suggest, I had a little picture of a chocolate platypus for Australia, for Easter in Australia. There it is. Can you see that? Can you see that, Neil? No? Yes? What I was going to say, for a bit of fun...
I muted myself. Yes, we can see it, yes.
Okay, if you hang on to that, if you take a shot of that picture and you share that with me, LinkedIn post or message me at LinkedIn, I've created a workbook. It's a 42-page workbook that takes you through all the steps that I think will give you all the skills and tools you need to enjoy meaningful work. I'm happy to share that with individuals free as a part of this great initiative that you've put together, Neil. And if people do want to jump into some coaching, I'm happy to offer 40% off the first month of coaching if they can share this chocolate platypus.
Fantastic. That's really generous of you. Thank you so much. Well, like I said, I'll make sure I send that round afterwards. We do actually have a question that's come through from Robin. Would you do a job you don't like to get to one you would like? So would you do a job you don't like to get to one you would like? So, doing a job that you know you're not going to enjoy with the potential of there being a role that you are going to enjoy afterwards. Great
question. I've done 1,000 trips as an Uber driver. I've worked as a landscape gardener and a building labourer. So the short answer is yes. What I've learned over time is that every job is an opportunity to build a network and build a skill that can move you in a direction to creating a meaningful job that you can enjoy.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a pretty simple answer, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, yes. If you can see that outcome and you've got that goal in mind, right, it's definitely worth going down those steps. As long as there is that goal in mind, right? As long as that.
And I also totally, Neil. And the other thing that I would acknowledge is that most people's window for change is a lot shorter than they think it is, and most people's capacity to work is a lot less than people think it is. So the reason I highlight that is that if we do consciously choose to do a job that we don't love or we don't consider meaningful, that we don't enjoy, you've got to be really mindful. I think you need to engage a lot of support to make sure that you don't get stuck in that, because it's amazing how powerful habit and routine is. Okay. So one of the tips I give to a lot of people who've identified that the meaningful work they want to do might require a step change, that they find casual work around it. Because if you can find casual work around it, it's amazing the power of consistency and identity. The closer you are to your meaningful work and that role, the more you can talk about the fact that you do that. And then when people meet you this month, next month, 6 months' time, that's how they see you. That's how you see you. If you're moving between contracts or you're working full time and people ask you what you've done this week, they'll naturally assume your identity is listed to that, which might be this job that you don't love. So thinking about the structure of your work, but also acknowledging the importance of identity is really powerful. So that structure of that job that you don't like, sometimes the less it pays and the less comfortable it is, the better, because it's a really good driver to make a change.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. Well, look, I think it's been a really fascinating talk. You've obviously, like I said, resonated with some people in the messages there. So please go follow Brian on LinkedIn, and I will be sending around, like I said, I'll be sending around these videos to everyone, all the 855 people that have registered so far. That'll go out whenever I get the time to clip it up after I've caught up on my sleep. I'll send all those out, and hopefully there'll be some people that that resonates with as well. I'm sure there will be out of everyone else. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you giving up your time today. And and I'm sure everyone else is as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So thank you so much. And hopefully we can do something again together in the future. I'll be doing more of these events. Probably not this long, but I'll be doing more of these events in the future. So we can sort of condense it and get some great people on like yourself again.
Fantastic. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you so much.